Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of College Football Under Review, show made by a football fan for football fans everywhere. So if you're watching on YouTube, as you can tell, we're not in our home studio. We're away in Birmingham. You can tell by the American flag in the background. But today, we're getting that out of the way. We are going over our last conference for our conference deep dives, and it's none other than the SEC, where we're born and raised. So I know in the first introduction to this show, we said we're not going to have any SEC bias, but I got to be biased about one thing. There are some darn good teams in this conference, and it's going to be a shame that a lot of them are not going to be able to get a glimpse of even having a hopeful season for the college football playoff because of how tough some of these SEC schedules are. So with that being said, let's take the SEC under review. Now, the SEC, as we all should know, has kind of looked to be the expectation when it comes to college football dominance, especially when we were back in the 4-team playoff. And especially in the conference itself, since the departure of Nick Saban, this conference has kind of been undergoing a reshifting of talent and kind of the top tier teams that are found within this conference. And we can see that as Kalen DeBoer is still reeling from the transition and how tough that was last year with Nick Saban leaving and all the players departing, him bringing in his own players. And we've seen the talent disperse everywhere else in the SEC to the point where the top dog isn't the Georgia Bulldogs anymore. But we'll get into that later. Now, we're really looking at a question of, is the SEC still dominant, especially with Nick Saban's departure? As the last two national championships have gone to Big Ten teams, which puts the SEC in a hard spot. And I think they really need to execute and get 4 teams in this playoff so they kind of have the leverage coming back to them for this whole 12-team, 16-team expansion coming in the future, and for them to really hold weight to be able to say, yeah, we have 4 teams that are good enough to get in the playoffs, but we are wanting to do at large, to keep it that way. And I think that will put a lot of pressure on the Big Ten. The question is whether or not this season they will show the country that in the South, football just means more. So with the conference overview out of the way, we are going to get into our title contenders, this first tier of teams that have a shot at winning the SEC championship. And that first team is Alabama. Now, the roster is going through what I like to call, especially when you have a coach come in and transition, is there's about the first 3 years you have different phases. The first year is kind of you transitioning into that role and that spot. You have the roster you're kind of given with the leftovers of the previous coach and the people that you have brought in through the portal and the guys that you have struggled to keep in your recruiting class for that season. So it's kind of just, how can we calm the flames? And in this second year, it's 2/3 of the process. He kind of has his culture set. He's figured out who his guys are. He's been able to recruit his own guys, get portal players that are his, and the players from last season have kind of trickled out due to portal graduation or the NFL draft. Now, this transition is going to, in my opinion, we need to see Alabama have a dominant running game again. This needs to be established this season as well if they want a double-digit season. Junior quarterback Ty Simpson is looking to be the starting quarterback week 1 as they kind of are leaning on him. And I mean, he's been in the program for so long, you have to kind of give him that starting position, I think, week 1, but it is his position to lose. He has solid skill positions around him, like running back Jam Miller and wide receivers Jeremy Bernard and Ryan Williams. Now, when we transition to the defense, Kane Womack is definitely going to be happy that several of his defensive players with NFL talent returns this year and opted for not going in the draft. This defense should be strong again and really has the ability to show more diversity and have a stronger attack on all fronts. Deontay Lawson and Keon Sabb must stay healthy on this defense if they want to stay dominant through the stretch in their schedule. Alabama has a very manageable schedule with the majority of their top 25 matchups being at home in Tuscaloosa. The expectation this season with DeBoer is making a playoff appearance, as the Bama fans are rabid. I know, I'm one of them. And we all kind of said, majority of us were kind of like, okay, we know the first year nothing crazy is going to happen. That Georgia game was crazy, but this year we're looking to them and saying, what are you going to bring to the table? And this is kind of, I think, DeBoer's make or break year, not for his job, but with the Bama fan base. So he definitely needs it, but I think Kane Womack is definitely going to be able to have a more varied and, how I say this, evolved defense and able to show multiple different looks against opponents, as last year he was kind of very standard, and he was able to then build on the defense further down the season, down the stretch. I expect the same kind of thing to happen. And then the next team is Georgia, the Bulldogs. You really can't count Georgia out from making the SEC title game ever since Kirby Smart has been able to create a dominant culture and dominant team at Georgia. For the first time in a while, though, with this transfer portal and NIL, Georgia really won't see the majority of its team returning this season. This team is going to be looking towards Gunnar Stockton to lead the locker room, and I think he can. I think he is a solid and reliable passer, as we saw in the SEC championship when he came in for Carson Beck. And the biggest thing they need to do is not drop passes. They had the most drop passes of any team in the country last season. So they definitely need to get back to fundamentals with that. The Dogs lost solid talent in the portal for the offensive skill positions, which isn't going to help anything. And the biggest issue is their offensive line for the first time in a while, as it only sees one returning starter this season. The defense is filled with blue chip talent that's going to set a solid foundation for the team that can only improve game by game. This team can only lean on the defense, though, I think, for so long, with a schedule that sees some high-powered offenses and Heisman candidate players on the opposing rosters. If this offense can strive to fix the turnovers and actually do so and stop committing dropped passes, then I think the SEC title game is very much in reach again for the Georgia Bulldogs this season. Our next team is LSU. Garrett Nussmeier is one of the front runners to win the Heisman Trophy this season after a dominant offensive line, in my opinion, was able to keep him protected and have a great passing attack. Some of those offensive linemen are gone. And some of the power four wide receivers with their best pass catchers are going to still allow them to be dominant, but not as much as they were last season. Aaron Anderson is leading the pack in the wide receiver room, and all-around defensive player Harold Perkins Jr. should easily continue to be a threat on the defense and be a circle on every offensive coordinator's game plan coming in to playing LSU. Outside of a solid linebacker core, the safeties are really full of fresh faces. And when we're looking at Brian Kelly, this should be his strongest roster that he has had in Baton Rouge. He has been able to get these consistently top recruiting classes the past 3 years, but seemingly hasn't been able to do anything with it And I think the LSU fan base is starting to get a little ticked off that he hasn't been able to do anything about it. And I think that this is a telltale sign of if he's a fit in Baton Rouge or not this season. He has a difficult first half of the schedule. So if they can come out of that with maybe one loss going into November, this team should make the playoffs, in my opinion, and finally have their berth into the playoffs with Brian Kelly at the helm. Brian Kelly, like I said, isn't going to be on too much of a hot seat if they don't make the playoffs this year, just because his buyout is so large. I don't think LSU is willing to take a loss like that, even if they don't make the playoffs. But Garrett Nussmeier, he is a competent and strong quarterback in this SEC. He's a Heisman favorite. I think he can do it if he can stay healthy. There was a scare in the LSU fan base a couple of days ago where there were rumors that he tore his ACL in practice. Those rumors aren't true. He just had a minor tendon sprain, and the severity, as the training staff said, was a 1.5 out of 10. But really, you can't trust anything they say. They're just trying to make sure that Vegas still has them good on the odds. And then when we get to our final team that is a title contender in this conference, it's got to be one of the favorites, top two favorites, I believe, to win the national championship this year. And that's none other than Texas. It seems the only two words you have to say to convince people that Texas actually has a national championship in sight is these two words: Arch Manning. That's enough for me to say, heck yeah, they have a great shot. The talent that Arch Manning has shown last year in bits and pieces outside of that Georgia game where he was looking at ghosts and couldn't figure out what to do. His talent combined with the offensive schematical mastermind that Sark is gives this team one of the best chances to win it all this season. The offensive line may not be full of returning starters, but the players that are protecting Arch Manning on the offensive front have gone through the practice squads with him for the last couple of years he has been there. What does that mean? It means that they understand his tendencies. They are all here for him, all in, and they're going to protect their guy, because I definitely think Arch Manning is going to be a quarterback that stays another year. His dad has said it, and I think that it is very likely he will stay another year if he has been this guy to sit on the bench and wait for his turn. The weapons he has are absolutely amazing. He has running back Quintravion Wisner and wide receivers Ryan Wingo, who is going to be a breakout player this season, and DeAndre Moore Jr. And both of these guys combined for 14 touchdowns last season. The defense, though, looks to be maybe the most dominant, or at least one of the most dominant inside the SEC, and especially on the defensive line. The linebackers and cornerbacks boast experience and blue-chip talent as depth. This Texas program has become one of the most professionally run programs since NIL became a tool for all these programs in college football. They have gained top recruits year in and year out since they got Steve Sarkisian, in additions to the coaching staff that have only given this team a positive influence and positive records in the season. All of this should lead to the SEC championship another year, and possibly the national championship, thanks to their easy SEC schedule. All you Texas fans can thank Greg Sankey for that, because you easily could have gotten the Oklahoma treatment, and let's just say you don't want the Oklahoma treatment, because let's look at Brent Venables, and he is reeling from that SEC season last year. Now, those cover all of our title contender teams. I think Texas is the strongest one out of this bunch to win it all and win the SEC championship, even though they didn't get it done last year. But I think that's just due to Quinn Ewers. But that's enough of that. When we're looking at these coaches in the SEC, I feel like the coaches do mean more. We've got some coaches in this conference with some of the best pedigrees in college football. When we're looking at it, before we get into these bowl game contenders and the teams that we have in the bowl game, before we get there, I really do have to touch on these coaches. There are so few coaches since Nick Saban came in that are still coaching that have made a national championship appearance or even a national championship game. And a lot of them are in the SEC. So I'm just going to list off some of these coaches that really have caught my eye. And it's no shock that almost all of the title contenders have these coaches, except for one exception. So first, we have Brian Kelly. He has a career record of 308 wins and 107 losses, 2 ties. Currently, he is the winningest active head coach in college football. He has 2 college football Division II national championships under his belt, 1 D1 national championship appearance, but it was vacated by the NCAA. Next, we have Kirby Smart. He has a career record of 105 wins and 19 losses. He has 3 SEC championships, 2 D1 national championships. What else can you say? And he won those back-to-back, and one of those was against Nick Saban. Then we have Steve Sarkisian. He has a career record of 84 wins, 52 losses. And you may be saying, wow, he's doing great at Texas. How does he have that many losses? Well, he was coaching before that as a head coach, and then Nick Saban had to put him through his rehab program in Tuscaloosa and picked him up. And he has 1 Big 12 championship before Texas left. Now, this is the one coach that is not in the title contenders, and that is Lane Kiffin. He has a career record of 105 wins and 52 losses and has 2 Conference USA championships. You may be looking at that and be thinking, why did you add Lane Kiffin? Why did you put him in these title contenders? Since he has become the head coach of Ole Miss, he has given them double-digit winning seasons and has had one of the best successes since COVID happened. Him, Georgia, and I believe Alabama have had the best records since COVID, and that's a pretty good thing to say and put yourself next to Kirby Smart and the Alabama program. And I think he's an offensive mastermind that knows how to pick up players in the portal, which is something rare that you find nowadays. People either seem to get it right or wrong, but he seems to be very good at evaluating portal talent. And that's why I have him in these coaches list with some of these great guys. And then finally, Kalen DeBoer. He has a career record of 113 wins and 16 losses. He has 3 NAIA national championships, 1 Pac-12 championship, and 1 Division I national championship game appearance. So all these coaches, I think they just mean more in here. And I know in the Big 12, I had talked about how those coaches were so seasoned. They have had so many years coaching. This is different. These are guys that may have long-running records in history like Brian Kelly, or are kind of just hitting the scene like Kalen DeBoer in Division I. But these guys create winning programs, and they have a culture with them that is just different and found not really everywhere in college football. So outside of that, we're now getting into our teams in the SEC that are going to easily make a bowl game this year. And the first one, this fan base better be happy that I'm saying this, Auburn. Yes, Auburn. They're going to make a bowl game. I promise you. I promise. You're going to make a bowl game. I know you're a little nervous about the season. That freeze warning's in effect. Well, sad to say, since freeze has gotten to Auburn and that warning has come into effect, the only thing that's been frozen is the explosive offenses that we are used to seeing with Hugh Freeze when he was at Ole Miss and Liberty. But with Ole Miss, I don't think we should delve too deep in how he got those players. Quarterback Jackson Arnold, who they got in the portal, will attempt to start the season hot against Baylor week 1, which is a must-win game for this program and the standard they want to set going forward in this season. They need to have a darn good offense to go against that Baylor offense, who is going to be one of the top 30 in the nation, in my opinion. Arnold's going to be passing, though, to one of the better wide receiver rooms in the SEC, with players like Cam Coleman looking to be the favorite wide receiver with a potential talent explosion from sophomore Malcolm Simmons. Auburn's defense last season had the 28th best ranked scoring defense, with 4 returning starters coming back to that squad in every facet of the defense, who should be leading Auburn's best transfer portal class that they've had with Hugh Freeze. If Arnold can run Hugh Freeze's offensive scheme and utilize the wide receiver weapons around him, and the defense can continue to gain success and momentum from last season, I think there's no reason that this Auburn team shouldn't make a bowl game this year. I think the ceiling for them, though, is 8 or 9 wins. They're going to have a tough schedule, and they're going to have to play DeBoer at the end of the season and Georgia. I mean, that's been kind of rough on the Auburn fan base. You've had to go up against 2 of the best programs in the last decade. So good luck to the Auburn faithful, and my prayers are out to you with Hugh Freeze. Next is Florida, and Florida's interesting. DJ Lagway, I think, already has a bigger name than Billy Napier does in Gainesville, but his actions on the field and how he performs is definitely going to put him and Napier's legacy in Gainesville on the line this season. Lagway, in my opinion, is already going to be a Heisman favorite for the season if his health is at 100%. He was seen in a boot when they had camps recently, so that's not something you want to look forward to. Running backs Jaden Baugh and Jacoby Jackson are going to be backfield threats, complemented by a strong offensive line in front of them with a lot of experience. This defense is going to be one of Billy Napier's better squads since joining the Gators, and shouldn't be a dip too much from last season. It seems that the only thing stopping them from having great success this season is any number of the preseason top 25 teams that are littered on their schedules this season. They have one of the toughest schedules, if not the toughest schedule, going into the season, not in the SEC, but in the nation. And that's a tall order for Billy Napier, and I think that this 2-year stretch of having one of the toughest schedules in the nation is the reason he has not lost his job yet, and also to the fact that Lagway was able to storm out onto the field and create a hurricane of success coming later down in the season, where they beat some tough opponents like Ole Miss and LSU. Next is a team that I personally like in the SEC and don't really want to say that they're my second favorite team, but I've kind of always liked this program and what they have shown the last couple of years with Eli Drinkwitz. Yes, I'm talking about Missouri, possibly my second favorite SEC team. Got a couple of friends out there. Don't let them hear that. This team has had a dominant past 2 years in the wins and loss category, and the offensive production has been amazing at Missouri. But after the departure of a lot of key starters going into this season, the biggest issue is definitely going to be how can they keep up their offensive production. They've revamped the skill position players and added back up Penn State quarterback Bo Pribula. And if you're wondering, wow, how did something like that happen? Well, all the way back in the college football playoffs last year, the transfer portal was open. And if he wanted to transfer somewhere, he had to choose during the college football playoff. I know it's pretty ridiculous, right? That's because it is, because the NCAA doesn't know how to make a freaking schedule. And this forced him to go somewhere else, even though he said he wanted to stay at Penn State. But I think it was more of a career decision and family decision that even though he wanted to be at Penn State, he had to go somewhere that he would be able to have playing time. And I think that's going to make him a little bit hungrier going into the season and want to show that he's got what it takes. The defense looks better than last season and should, as they're returning 7 starters and got other Power 4 starters in the portal to make up, I think, a top 25 defense coming into this season. Missouri has an easy schedule, but every 3 losses last season, all their 3 losses from last season, as I should correct myself, came from other SEC opponents. It's not really cool, but if this coaching staff is able to continue the culture and double-digit winning seasons, don't count them out of the playoff as a dark horse. Yet, if they want to do this, and it's a stretch, they have to look almost perfect in conference play and take care of all the other out of conference. But I think this could be a dark horse to make the SEC, not the SEC championship, just because they lose to SEC opponents. They're not going to be in that championship game. But they could be one of the first teams out of the playoff or the last team in if they're able to show that their production on offense hasn't dipped, their defense is good, and that Eli Drinkwitz is able to have a commanding coaching staff to lead them to a successful season. Sorry, I got to get some water here. So now we move on to Ole Miss. Lane Kiffin has been, as I stated earlier in this episode, consistently able to utilize and evaluate portal players and add them as a positive impact on his roster and to his overall record every season. Quarterback and 19-year-old who has already graduated, Austin Simmons, will give the people a confident showing, I think, as last season we were able to see a glimpse of his talent putting together a scoring drive against Georgia in that game last season. The wide receiver room was able to get Power 4 players, and the O-line is going to be fed by the portal once again for depth. The defense takes the hardest hit as only 2 returning starters are present from one of the nation's best scoring defenses last year. Lane Kiffin has been just outside of the top teams in the conference, and I think that he might have to wait another year with his defense having such a rebuild. And then another team that we stated earlier, Oklahoma. These Sooners have been obsolete in the discussion of great offenses in college football since Lincoln Riley departed and left town. The O-line has 4 starters returning from the worst offensive lines in the SEC last season. This offense, outside of that it's bolstered by the portal, is not going to be something confident. Yet they were able to get Washington quarterback, and he was very dominant last season, kind of an air raid attack. I think they're going to kind of make him a little bit more grounded as these SEC teams may pick him apart. The defense is going to be strong and returns enough players not to be scrambling for depth. And Brent Venables is a great defensive-minded coach that doesn't really have to worry about how consistent his defense will be because it's always going to be there. The defense is all and should always be Brent Venables' highest priority. And to allow his offense the privilege to grow early in the season, he needs this defense to not only be competent, but dominant in some of these SEC games. His schedule, though, is one of the hardest in the SEC again, facing multiple preseason top 25 opponents that I think will easily derail a good season for them, but they're going to do enough just to make a bowl game. Next is a team that I was kind of tempted to put in the title contenders, but with how many people they lost on defense, I just don't think it's going to happen, and that's South Carolina. South Carolina was able to have a breakout season under head coach Shane Beamer last year, and we should see how this program was able to capitalize on that success in the portal. They had a good portal class, a lot of it coming from the defense, but the standout player is quarterback Lenore Sellers. He has a revolving door of skill sets that should help the young wide receiver core make opportunities in games. The running backs must be able to be reliable this season and produce numbers to balance out the offensive scheme so Sellers' versatility of talent can be a threat deep in games. The majority of the defense starters last season are gone, which forced the team to add depth in the portal. This defense, though, should continue to be dominant within league play if their young linebackers are just as good as the rest of the defense. This team has a lot of expectations after 2024, and the only way they can accurately meet those expectations and get a playoff bid is to stay healthy on defense while getting everything they can out of quarterback Lenore Sellers and the offense that they will most likely need to lean on for 2025. And it's because of this toss-up with the portal players that I am very hesitant to put them in those title contenders with the likes of the other teams. And I really want to see how Shane Beamer reacts to the expectations that were put on him from last season. And that's the main reason why I have them in the bowl contenders. I think they're easily going to make a bowl game. They just have some tough games that could get a lot tougher if Lenore Sellers gets hurt, God forbid, or this defense loses some players here and there. And these expectations kind of, I think, are going to put a bad taste in a lot of South Carolina fans' mouths. Now, this team exceeded all expectations last year, too, with, in my opinion, the quarterback they had. I don't like Nico. And yes, I'm talking about Tennessee. Josh Heupel and Tennessee are entering a transition season, in my opinion, after the departure of Nico Imaliva. Oh, did I say that wrong? No, I think it's right. Nico Imaliva, because he left Tennessee for some money, even though he's getting paid less. Idiot. And they also lost not only him, but Dylan Sampson to the draft. This leaves a lot to be desired from an offense who sees a good quarterback come from UCLA, Joey Aguilar, but not an elevation of talent in the position, in my opinion. The offense has had a lot of starting player turnover that will represent a dip in talent and production compared to last season. The defense, on the other hand, still looks to be one of the more threatening in the SEC conference, which is something good Josh Heupel has going for him. The unit is going to see 7 returning starters all around the board that had a season of over 100 tackles for loss. That's a great stat for them as a defense. The only position I can really see that could be an issue early on is the safety position, as only one upperclassman populates that secondary. The Volunteers won't be bad, and but they won't be playing for a playoff spot this season. You can look at how you want. You can look at it how you want with the portal, and the departure of Nico gives Josh Heupel, in my opinion, a season that won't hurt his reputation in Knoxville. If he exceeds what he's supposed to do in Vegas, good for him. He's going to be looked at as a coach that was like, wow, no matter what talent leaves or comes in, he's going to bring consistency to our program, which is something that I think the Knoxville fan base has been wanting. They've had so many great coaches come through and produce a great season, and then they kind of fall off the next 2 years, and they're like, okay, next man up. But I think Josh Heupel is going to be a consistent coach. I just think he's definitely going to be looked on more favorably this season, just making a quality bowl game because of Nico leaving and him kind of putting his foot down. Another team is Texas A&M. The Aggies are coming off a great year one season with head coach Mike Elko, as they were the highest SEC team in league play for scoring in 2024, which is pretty amazing for this Texas A&M team and Mike Elko, who is more of a defensive-minded coach. Quarterback Marcel Reed was able to evade SEC defenses with a lot of ease last season with his legs, but he really needs to evolve his passing attack and to accurately upgrade the offense's scoring capabilities. You may be saying, upgrade their capabilities. They were the highest scoring in the SEC last season. Yes, I know, but there's always room for improvement. And I think there's going to be some deadly offenses this season found in the SEC. He will be able to accomplish this feat, I think, with one of the best offensive lines in the SEC, as every starter returns for the offensive line unit. All of the skill position players have explosive speed to complement Reed as well, with some of the disappointments from the Aggie defense coming in the second half of the season. Elko has claimed he will be play calling for the defense this season because of that and in response. The team must improve upon their pass defense and tackling in space to have a real chance this season. They have a difficult second half of their season and should make a bowl game, but their ceiling is nothing else than a bowl game, in my opinion. And then our last team in these bowl contenders is Vanderbilt. Diego Pavia not only competed against SEC defenses, but was able to outmaneuver them last season. His elusiveness and competent pass selection made Vandy actually invest in the offensive line this season to get more out of Pavia in his final year. The tight end and running back, including Cedric Alexander, return to join him, and the wide receivers added New Mexico State Trent Hudson, who had over 500 yards receiving and 10 touchdowns. The defense doesn't have any big playmakers, but returns a slew of veteran players who should be improved from the previous season. Their safety will be the biggest challenge to address the whole season. This team will be more advanced in their execution and play calling with Pavia returning. But I think they will win more games than last season, but just one, as I still think they're going to struggle against these SEC programs, as even though they are going to be better, more equipped than last season, their size and skill isn't there as some of these bigger SEC programs. Got to get some more water. Now, we are moving on to our rebuilds. And the first one is Arkansas. This can't be a shock to anyone. They really haven't been in relevancy for a while. Arkansas and Sam Pittman is looking at Talon Green as his quarterback once again to lead this team to a winning season and his overall record above 500. Green must improve from the previous season in his decisiveness as a passer, and the offense is restocked with transfer portal players all over the field, with some offensive linemen returning from last season. Arkansas's defense is the same way, with the main returners being linebackers Xavier Sorley Jr. and Stefan Dix Jr. The defensive line is not up to the SEC caliber, in my opinion, as these other teams possess in the conference. They will really have to lean on their offense for a winning schedule, and that just means that they're going to have to protect Green even more. And I think it just puts too much pressure on this team to make a bowl game. And then next is Kentucky. Mark Stoops is looking at a tipping point year for his program that honestly could affect his legacy and the progression of the Kentucky football program as a whole. They've gone out and gotten quarterback Zach Calzada, who sees a whole new wide receiver room from the portal, and the defense sees a lot of experienced players return who are younger than others in the league that must mesh with their transfer portal players within the defensive linemen mainly. The schedule that they have ahead and the talent assembled to face it smells like disaster, and if they're unable to make a bowl game for the program, I think Mark Stoops is slowly on his way out, though he's one of those other coaches in the SEC that has a hefty buyout. And then our last team is Mississippi State. I personally like what Jeff Lebby will be able to build in Starkville, but it won't be near the ceiling he can have this season. They won't be at the ceiling that I know that they will be in the coming years. The offense will improve overall if quarterback Blake Shapen will be healthy. He started, I think, the first 4 games last season and then got injured and couldn't play the last 8. The running back room is going to be led by Devon Booth, who had over 1,200 all-purpose yards last season. The only proponent that needs to be confident is the offensive line, and the defense is not set to be a dominant force in conference play, as their defense ranked 125th in the country last season. The lack of depth last season was the reason, and the response was met with transfers and a couple of 4-star recruits. They have the ability to figure out problems before conference play, but once conference play hits during their season schedule, season's going to look very rough for them. So that is our deep dive into all the teams. And now we're going to give you our final standings and what we think the SEC is going to look like. In the title contenders category, it's no shock. Number 1 for us is going to be Texas. Number 2, LSU. Number 3, Georgia. Number 4, Alabama. In the bowl game contenders, we have number 5, Ole Miss. Number 6, Missouri. Number 7, Tennessee. Number 8, South Carolina. Number 9, Texas A&M. 10, Florida. 11, Auburn. 12, Oklahoma. And 13, Vanderbilt. And then in the rebuilds, we've got 14 Arkansas, 15 Mississippi State, and 16 Kentucky. In our title game for the SEC, it's 1 and 2. It's Texas against LSU. I think Brian Kelly's going to finally be able to do something with his roster this year, with Garrett Nussmeier being such a veteran. I think he will live up to the Heisman hype and potentially give them a great season and a SEC championship berth. Yet I think Texas is too dominant to where they are going to win the SEC championship this year in their second season. And like I stated earlier, they can thank Greg Sankey for that if they're able to do it with their easy schedule. Though their week 1 matchup against Ohio State is definitely going to be one of the best games of the college football season. So that wraps up our entire SEC deep dive. Next week, we will be having our full 2025 season predictions, as well at the beginning of the episode, we are going to do our FBS independents as well. That includes Notre Dame, Oregon State, Washington State, and UConn at the beginning of the episode. And then we will go into our full 2025 season predictions. You may be saying, what's that episode going to look like? And I'll tell you right now. It's going to feature, like I stated, our independent teams. And then after we go through those independent teams, we will recap and present our final four, or our final Power Four standings and title game winners and Group of Five champions. So if you're watching on YouTube or video on Spotify, we will have those on screen, because 4 weeks ago, maybe our opinions have changed. Fall camp's going on, so we may have slight differences in the final standings. I'm not going to read it all aloud, but I will be saying at least the title game and all of that. So watch it on YouTube or Spotify video, and you'll be able to look at the final standings we have. Once we finish that, we're going into our Heisman roundtable and our Heisman finalists, as well as who we think will be the winner of the Heisman. And next after that will be our prediction for the 12-team playoffs, who gets in, and our round-by-round winners till we crown our prediction for the national championship game. Next week, we will also be providing you, the audience, some updates to the show's scheduling, as well as updates you can expect moving into the 2025 season. What can that look like? Well, we may be having another episode every week and have 2 episodes coming out each week, one before the weekend games happen and one after those weekend games happen. And the other updates, watch out. The Instagram is going to be receiving a graphics overhaul, and we might be seeing a graphics overhaul with the show in general. Now, we're going to keep our same color scheme vibe, but since I have been able to get the show going along, everything's gotten in a good routine, and we've figured out everything, and we're striving to constantly evolve as on the show. I am now working on evolving everything off the show and giving you a much better presentation and content for our Instagram and social media. So, with our episode finally over, I'm Nick Watts. Thank all of you for tuning in to this episode, and we'll see you next time when we take more college football under review.